Hi guys, Sean Wilson Brooks here, back again with another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. Now the purpose of today's video is essentially to help you guys to get to know me. Specifically what I'm going to talk about is my personal health, my history with my health and how these things have affected me in the past. It kind of feels like to me that my health is related to my fitness in that I wouldn't have really been interested in it if I hadn't got sick in the first place. I mean, I always been a big kid. Even when I was born, I was £10.5 when I was born. I was only 2 days overdue and I was £10.5. I nearly weighed a stone when I was born. So I was a little fat kid, you know, Michelin Man style. I had the curves on my arms, all the fat rolls on my body. I'd always been a big kid. I'd always been one of the biggest kids in my class at school. Even growing up, like when I was younger, 5, 6 years old, infant school, preschool, all of those kinds of things, I'd always been big. As a result of this, I'd never been particularly mobile. I mean, I'd always had a pretty dodgy relationship with food in the sense that if I saw it and I liked the look of it, I tended to eat it. And this carried on for quite a significant period of time. It carried on through all of my prepubescent years, even my first few teen years, it carried on that way. But unfortunately, as I'm about to get onto, when I was very young, I did get quite severely sick. But first things first, what happened before I got physically sick quite badly is I got very mentally sick, and this happened a few years beforehand. So when I was 11 years old, I can remember the date exactly, it was the 5th of October 2011. It was the lunch break at my school. My school is actually literally just down the road from my house, it's a couple of minutes walk away. And yeah, it was lunch break at my school. I was hanging around with my friends as normal, as I always would be, probably eating like a peanut butter sandwich or something because I was a little fatso. And all of a sudden, my friends start surrounding me, crowding around me in a big group. So I kept asking them. I was asking them, why are you grouping up around me? Is there something wrong? Is there something I've done? Is there something on me that I can't see or whatever? And my friends just keep saying to me, and I can remember these words very, very clearly, "You're turning blue." And I was really confused by this, obviously. I mean, I understood from reading and from pop culture and whatnot, seeing in films, people tend to turn blue when they're running low on oxygen, right? So obviously this was quite a big concern to me. I had no idea why this was the case. And my friends kept saying to me for around 60 seconds or so, I'd stopped breathing, I'd turned blue and I'd gone extremely rigid. And I went to the medical room in my school, and obviously not being qualified nurses or whatever, they didn't really seem to understand the situation. So my mother got called, she got told to come to the school, and I got picked up, taken to the Children's Hospital in Brighton and observed. I ended up actually having another absent seizure in the hospital while I was being observed, and that day I was diagnosed with epilepsy. Now the confusing thing about my epilepsy is it's never stayed as one singular type. And this, I don't know if this is common with people with epilepsy, but in my particular case, I was diagnosed like nearly 10 years ago now, and my epilepsy's never stayed the same. So through this time, I was having absence type seizures. I ended up missing quite a lot of school as a result of it. I'd get taken out of school pretty much any single time I'd have one. With time, the seizures started happening while I was asleep as well, so I'd end up going really, really rigid in my sleep. And my mum would say that she would recognise me having one by the sound that my bed would make when I was having a seizure, so my bed would be rattling from my movements, like my jerky movements. As time went on, obviously, I kind of tried to get on with my life as much as I could. Being young, it didn't really get in the way of much, because obviously I wouldn't be much on my own at that age anyway, 11, 12, 13. But it did impede my academic potential and stuff like that. I mean, I did get taken out of school quite often because the seizures would be happening so frequently. People felt quite uncomfortable being around me when I had them. Obviously there were some people that were really, really considerate, really supportive, but unfortunately I did have to deal with a lot of bullying as well. And there was one occurrence when someone that I won't name, obviously I don't want to cause any problems or anything like that, but there was a person who filmed me having a seizure and on their phone and put it on Facebook at the time. I did deal with a lot of nasty comments and stuff like that, but you know, all of that's in the past now. It was a long time ago, it's 6, 7 years ago now, so it doesn't affect me as much as it used to. Anyway, that leads up to 2013, and Around this time my epilepsy was getting more severe. It was inconsistent in the sense that sometimes I'd go a couple of weeks without having a seizure, and then all of a sudden I would end up having 5 or 6 in one day, and that would continue on for multiple days running, and then it would go back to not having any. So it seemed to come in waves. Now the doctors had tried medicating me numerous times by this point. I'd been on probably half a dozen different medications. None of them had seemed to impact me positively. There were a lot of medications that brought about very nasty side effects. I tried sodium valproate, which was the one that I developed a toxicity to at the time. That was really, really nasty. It was essentially like having really severe food poisoning. I've tried carbamazepine. That was another drug that I didn't react well to. I developed some really bad behavioural side effects as a result of that. Very increased aggression, increased anger. I found like I had a really, really short fuse when I was on this, and if someone said something that I didn't agree with, it would really set me off. A number of different drugs, unfortunately I didn't agree with necessarily, but there was one that I took, and this was just before I had to go into hospital for the first time, so I'm talking just after my 14th birthday, so April 2013. And this drug itself is called lamotrigine, and unfortunately when I was taking lamotrigine, well, it's strange because at the time I wasn't really suffering from it at all. It seemed like the drug, although it wasn't necessarily having much of a positive impact on my seizures, it wasn't bringing about anything bad either, so the doctors didn't feel too worried about upping the dosage. Now what I noticed around this time was I started getting very severe abdominal pains and very bad abdominal cramping, and I was convinced at the time it was something like gastroenteritis or food poisoning, something similar. I started developing really, really bad bowel movements and stuff. So I don't want to go into that too much detail because obviously it's not like the prettiest picture, but it's really bad, like diarrhea and urgency in needing to go to the toilet and stuff. Obviously a very, very embarrassing thing to talk about with people. I tried to avoid the topic as much as I possibly could do, although that wasn't always possible because obviously I still found myself in school. I'd have to leave a lot of classes in order to go to the bathroom, and I'd be spending a lot of time out of it because of the problems I had. But I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone about it at that point. So eventually I told people. I told my mum first, and she told me basically to just keep an eye on it. And time went on, a few weeks, continued with the stomach pain, and this is where things started to get really concerning. I actually found blood in my feces. Now after I told her about the stomach pain I was experiencing, I actually went up to the hospital and I waited in accident emergency for a few hours that night. Bear in mind this was quite late in the evening, this was around 8:30 PM and I needed to be off for school the next day, so I didn't want to stick around too long. But I knew that this was something that I needed to get checked. And I waited and I waited, and eventually I got seen by a doctor who I told my symptoms to, I told my concerns to, and I was told, don't worry, you don't need to be concerned. This sounds like a case of something really simple like gastroenteritis or food poisoning. You could probably just wait, take some antibiotics, and it will go away in a few weeks. And that kind of settled me a bit. It made me worry less about what was going on. And although I felt like, personally, I didn't believe that deep down, I didn't believe that it was something that simple, I wanted to believe that. So it made it a lot easier to kind of let go of it. So I went back to school, I went back to my day-to-day routine, decided to kind of just observe how things were and go from that point forward. Now the same routine happened pretty much day to day from that point forward. And I said, like in my intro, in my previous video, how long I was in hospital for the first time. I was in for a good few months. And the same thing continued. I wasn't eating, I wasn't doing anything basically. Didn't have any strength anymore because I'd lost all the strength in my muscles because I wasn't being satiated nutritionally. And oh man, thinking about it now, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. And this was the point where something really clicked, that I knew something was wrong, and I knew that I would have to talk to someone about it. But I was so afraid of doing so because I knew that that meant something was wrong. And I knew that as soon as I admitted to that, then it would be a big deal and things would get more severe. So, I mean, thinking about this now, it makes me feel so stupid, but I didn't talk to anyone. At the time, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I kept it to myself for probably about 6 weeks, a month and a half. And bear in mind, during this time, all the way through this, the pain was getting more and more severe. It was getting harder to bear, harder to deal with. Like if I was standing up, my stomach cramps would be so bad I'd have to jump up and down in order to try and distract myself from the pain. And obviously, because I was too stupid to tell people about what was going on, no one seemed to, well, obviously no one knew because I hadn't told them. So as far as people were aware, I was just jumping up and down on the spot looking like an idiot for absolutely no reason. But eventually it got to the point where I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. It was getting too severe. Like, the volume of what was in my stool was much worse, and it was essentially just liquid at this point. So obviously when I needed to go to the toilet, I really needed to go to the toilet. Do you know what I mean? It was a case of I had to go then or I would mess myself. And I did numerous times in school. I did. But you know, it's embarrassing thinking back on it now. It is embarrassing thinking back on it now, but thinking about it retrospectively, there's nothing I could have done. There's nothing I could have done. And I feel like I can take some kind of comfort in the sense that if other people found themselves in the same situation, I think a lot of people probably would have done the same thing. But anyway, I came clean. I told my mum about it and I said to her, there's blood in my poo basically. And she said to me, okay. She didn't really seem to know what to say at the time, but she said, next time that you go, leave it so that I can see. And I knew that that was a very big step. I knew that if I were to do that, it would become real. And I didn't want things to become real because I didn't want it to be a problem. I felt very hard done by, because I'd already had to deal with one serious health condition in the epilepsy, and I'd had done that since I was very young. But this was something else. This was something different. This was like a whole different kettle of fish, a whole different story, and I wasn't ready for that. But I did what she said. The next time I went to the toilet, I left it there, and she went and looked and came back out, and I can still remember the look on her face now. She was so shocked. She was so shocked. And she said to me, when you told me, I was thinking there might be a couple of dots. Now I can only assume how much blood there must have been in that at the time, but I honestly couldn't estimate, but it was a lot. That's all I can say, it was a lot. Anyway, I went into hospital. I was admitted the same day, and I was put in as an inpatient for observations basically. And at this point, I'd lost a lot of weight. People were noticing that I was losing weight. People in school were commenting on the fact that I was losing weight. And I felt good about it at the time, because like I said, I'd always been a big kid. I'd always been, like what I was seen as, even though I wasn't fat as such, I was big, you know, I was chunky, I had meat on me. I wouldn't say I was fat, but bear in mind, I mean, my weight at the moment's 86 kilograms, and I'm 6 feet tall, and I don't know how tall I was back then, maybe 5'7", but I weighed 83, 84 kilograms back then. And obviously I didn't train back then, I was too young for that. So I can't really think about how I looked. It's weird to think because I wasn't really concerned about my appearance back then, so I didn't really pay much attention to it. I didn't know what my body looked like because I didn't really care. And thinking about that now, I care so much about my appearance now, and I care so much about how I look. It's kind of weird to think about, but I couldn't eat. I was in too much pain, I was in too much discomfort constantly. I just couldn't eat, I couldn't bring myself to eat. So what the doctors would do was they'd either feed me intravenously through a cannula, or they'd give me high calorie liquids, like high calorie drinks with high macro and micronutrient content, in order to keep me sufficiently fed, basically. So I was actually diagnosed towards the end of this flare. I had a colonoscopy done, which is essentially, no way to sugarcoat it, you get a camera attached to a tube inserted into your anus. And honestly, it sounds bad on the surface, but in reality it isn't actually that daunting. The surgery itself isn't that daunting because you'll either be under general anesthesia, so you'll be completely unconscious, or you'll be under enhanced sedation, which is what I was, because they didn't want to anaesthetize me because they were worried my epilepsy might kick off. So you have a choice of either being under general anaesthetic or enhanced sedation, and I was put under enhanced sedation. Now, when I say that the operation itself wasn't that bad, the reason I say that is because in comparison to what happens beforehand, it is a walk in the park, trust me. Now, beforehand you have to go through a really, really taxing and really laborious process called bowel prep. And anyone that's had bowel prep knows exactly what I'm talking about, because it is not fun. It is really, really not fun. So the medicine that you get given before the exploratory operation is what's referred to as bowel prep. And yeah, it's not fun, let's say. It's really not fun, because essentially what happens is you're given a powder. You get one of two powders, and what you do is you open the powder up, mix it in with water, drink it, and then for 24 hours prior to your operation, you will essentially be, it will be like the Niagara Falls open from your anus, and you will have explosive, and I mean explosive, diarrhea for 24 hours straight, basically. So that when they actually do the operation and they, you know, shove the tube where the sun don't shine, they can have a really, really good rummage around in there, and you know, everything will be clear and everything will be open to exploration, you know. And I think the less I go into that, the better, so I'm going to move swiftly on. Now, the two medicines that I mentioned, the first one is called Movaprep. And Movaprep was the first one I actually tried when it came to having a colonoscopy. And this was towards the end of my first flare-up. And Movaprep is supposed to be flavoured like orange, so it says, orange flavoured, but in reality the taste was more accustomed to how I can imagine battery acid tasting. It was extremely unpleasant. But because I was young, because I was impressionable, I just chugged it down, said, oh no, it's fine, and then 15 minutes later I was sat on the toilet seat thinking, why have I done this? And the next time, the next flare-up I had, which was in the future, I had another colonoscopy done, and this time I tried a different medicine, which was called Picolax. And Picolax is a bit different in the sense that it is flavoured as a blackcurrant flavour, and well, it was better, don't get me wrong, it was better, it was more bearable, let's say, but by no means was it good. It was not like something you would drink for pleasure, trust me. And I mean, if you drank that for pleasure, I would kind of probably question what there is that's wrong with you, but either way, it wasn't a pleasant experience. Same result, explosive diarrhea for 24 hours. If I could suggest one of the two, I would personally say Picolax, because the Movaprep, the flavour of the Movaprep is just unbearable, and I know plenty of people that have tried Movaprep and have asked to have Picolax afterwards because they literally cannot deal with it. Now thankfully, The colonoscopies, now that I've been diagnosed, there's only a couple of times that I have to have this done. I think I'm on a basis now where I have to have it done once every 5 years, which means I'll actually be I'll be due for one next year in 2021, which I'm really not looking forward to. But basically what they're doing at this point is they just check for active inflammation, take biopsy samples from me so that they can test to see if the inflammation is still there, and basically just adjust my treatment plans from that point forward. Now, the medication that I was given in order to treat this first flare-up was a steroid called prednisolone. Now, I know what you're thinking, fitness YouTuber taking steroids. I've just exposed myself, but no, it's not an anabolic steroid. Prednisolone is used for a wide range of problems, including skin diseases, certain cancers, potential organ rejection after transplants, that kind of thing. And basically what it does is it works to reduce inflammation in the body. Now, most of the time these steroids did their job. Like this first time I had a flare-up when I was 14. I did actually get better thanks to the steroids, but unfortunately they did come with a number of side effects. Now, the first side effect, and probably the most notable side effect, was increased water retention in my body. So what I noticed that very quickly after starting this medication was I got extremely big puffy cheeks. So I would retain a lot of water in my face and my cheeks would really puff out. Another thing to notice was that I got super bad acne over my forehead, all over my face. It was really bad, and fortunately I haven't scarred much at all, but at the time, being such a young age as well, being 14, 15 years old, made me a bit of a prime target, as if I wasn't one already, for bullying. And unfortunately my school was quite rife with that kind of culture, alas. I like to think that the experience has kind of weathered me and turned me into who I am now, so whether that's a good thing or not, I think is up for interpretation, but either way. When I left hospital, it was, I want to say, August 2013. So I was getting towards the academic end of the year, and my muscles in my legs had actually atrophied, because I wasn't receiving any nutrition and I wasn't using the muscles, so the muscles basically just wasted away. So I needed physiotherapy on my legs to help me to walk again. See, I can remember the first time I got up out of the hospital bed after things started improving. The doctor said to me, there's no sense keeping you in bed anymore, basically. Let's see if we can get you on your feet. So he stood me up and tried to walk me a few steps, and I basically just fell. I fell to the floor because I had no strength in my legs whatsoever. And like I said, this is the part that got me interested in fitness, because I was given a rehabilitation program for my legs, and it sounds cliche, but actually around this time, this is around the time that I watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary Pumping Iron for the first time. And my dad, when I was younger, when I was a kid, he always had me watching like Jean-Claude Van Damme films and the Stallone movies from the 80s and the Schwarzenegger movies and what like that. And obviously these guys all absolutely jacked, and they had such desirable physiques and they all looked incredible. And I always thought when I was younger, I always thought it's simple to look like that. All you need to do is do a few push-ups and you'll build the muscle and X, Y, and Z. And obviously, I learned the lesson the hard way. I learned that losing muscle is a lot easier than building it. And this rehabilitation program basically had me on progressive overload, starting at minimal weights and building up and up and up and up until the muscles were developed enough to hold my weight again. And this took quite a long time. I think it took about 3 months in total. But what that did a very good job of telling me was what I had still. And it's very difficult to remember how much you have of value when there's so many things that seem to keep going wrong around you. But what this taught me more than anything is that you need to focus on the things that you still do have. Because it's only when you lose the things that you realise you care about that they kind of show their true value. And the most difficult thing to me was I'd spent the last few years playing the poor me card, and I didn't realise that until the time. I'd been very introverted, I'd been very resentful for how I basically felt like life had dealt me the bad hand, and I was going to be treated poorly by life for the rest of my life because I'm just the unlucky one. When in reality, there's always something more that you can lose, and people don't seem to realise that. Now I think that's where I'm going to leave things for now, guys. This video's ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would. There's a lot of information to go into, and there's quite a long story to go into after this one as well. So I'll be making a second part to follow up on the first part of this video, just so you can understand the final part of the story regarding my health and stuff like that. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you found the video entertaining. If you did enjoy it, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll soon be following this one up with a second part, so I hope you guys are looking forward to it. And until then, I'll see you soon.